I'm pleased to be joined today by Asha Eiley, a member of the board of directors at Henderson Rowe. Asha is the Chief Administrative Officer and Chief Legal Officer at Research Affiliates, a US institutional investment firm which pioneered smart beta and asset allocation. Asha is a licensed attorney with extensive legal and compliance experience. He was most recently the Chief Compliance Officer at Southern Sun Asset Management. Prior to that position, he served in senior legal and compliance roles at Partners Group, the New York Stock Exchange, and Alphadyne Asset Management in New York and London. So Asha, thanks for joining us today to tell us a bit more about your experience in the commercial world. I've touched on a few aspects on the road that you've traveled to get to this point, but you might want to add some additional color to that overview. What was it that led you into this career path, and were there any parts that were particularly pivotal for you?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, John. It's great to be here. As I reflect on my career and my path, there's a lot of different moments, and I think a lot of different decision nodes that helped me get to where I am today. I'd say, going back to grade school. I'm very grateful for my local community having really a mentorship program, particularly in my community for African American students, and it opened my eyes to career paths that I just wasn't really aware of, particularly engineering, the financial markets, and so I'm really grateful that I had those opportunities and I got that level of exposure that opened my eyes. And as I pursued education and advanced into graduate studies, and particularly the pursuit of a law degree, I really wanted to merge and leverage my legal training, particularly in the financial markets. The financial markets fascinated me. These instruments that were being created to ultimately deliver a return for the benefit of an end user was extremely fascinating. The speed of the transactions, the different tools that were being utilized, and the different market participants. And I think I gained that appreciation or that level of interest or excitement because of the geographic proximity that I was to the New York City, to the financial market.
Yeah.
And so just that fascination continued to increase. I had the legal training. I was looking to marry the two and saw compliance and legal as an opportunity to really do so, and really started my career at a law firm in New York Stock Exchange, and really was able to develop it from there. And I'm really grateful again for those early experiences to expose me to the different paths that were available, and then really just that fascination with the financial markets. And I just really nurtured that by figuring out a pathway that could support my legal training within the financial industry.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think I can relate to that idea of seeing those huge glass buildings on the edge of your city. And as a young person, it just, it's an area that you just want to get into. So
right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So corporate culture is obviously a massive thing in this day and age. And I'm wondering what you think makes a good corporate culture.
Organizations need to have a commitment to culture. And I think that starts with the leadership team or the executive team. I think there needs to be alignment between the group that there's a mission and we believe and that we're working and moving the organization towards something, and that our culture is important and we want to nurture it, and we want to ensure that it's healthy. And there's different sort of ways to make that, to ensure that an organization is healthy. And for us at Research Affiliates and my prior organizations, we've benefited from the support of management consultants who have really helped us and helped our executives with coaching, helping them with their interactions with other employees, helping them with training, and helping them just be consistent with our values. At Research Affiliates, we care about four key values, which are authenticity, collaboration, curiosity, and responsibility. And I think, again, we've been able as an organization to articulate those values to our staff, and also get our staff to affirm that those values resonate with them. And I think that sort of two-way sort of alignment is really important. One, from the definition from the executive team, and really adoption from the employees. And then a collective sort of effort to work consistent with those values. creates, I'd say, a good and healthy corporate culture environment.
Yeah, so it's having the buy-in on both sides, really,
Yes.
which is interesting. So it's interesting because we hear lots of examples of business leaders who take no prisoners at the helm of very successful firms. Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, they obviously spring to mind. Do you think businesses need those kind of personalities to do the very exceptional things, or is the corporate culture imbued with fear actually in most cases completely counterproductive?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll be the first one to say, I think there's different answers here. I don't know if there's a right one. I will say that I do think organizations really do benefit from a visionary. Someone like a Jeff Bezos or a Steve Jobs, and again, maybe not to that level of sort of influence as both of them have had on our globe and on society. But within their organizations, I still think you need someone who's a champion, who's a leader, who can clearly articulate the mission and the path for the organization. And I think if it's done so, even in an intense way, I think that's something that, as long as the employees that resonates and they're comfortable and they want to move forward down that path, I think that intensity is something that can be comfortable to the group, because again, there's alignment along the mission and the path that the organization is moving towards.
So that leads into our industry, which I wanted to ask you about, and how you'd summarize the state of the finance industry from that kind of business culture perspective. And over your career, which is reasonably long, like, have you seen that change to a great degree, or possibly not?
Well, I think in a positive way, the industry is much more inclusive than it ever was when I started 15, 16 years ago. And I think that's to its benefit. I think the financial industry has been very successful and a very powerful industry that has obviously, influenced the commercial markets for some time. But it's largely been, consisted of one type of sort of person. And I think it will benefit from diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds that, can bring new products, new processes, and new ideas to the industry. And so I do think there's much more of an opening and a welcoming and an interest in getting those different voices. And whereas in the past, I don't know if there was much of an emphasis. I think corporations and businesses within the financial industry talked about being committed to women and people of color and retaining talent in that area. But I think there's much more of a focus. They're much more intentional. And I think, honestly, they're speaking out. I think, I'm sure this theme will come up in the rest of our interview, but I also see corporations and businesses within the financial industry also taking a stand on some political issues. And I think that's also changed. And I think that's also in response to their employees as well, because their employees, in addition to having an inclusive environment, they also want their companies to also express a view. And I think that's also something that's an interesting theme that we've seen change over time.
You're not too far from Hollywood, and that's littered with characterizations in our industry, from the Gordon Gekko, Wolf of Wall Street. And often I have conversations with clients, and they think that's what our industry is like. On this side of the Atlantic, it feels a bit dated, but I'm wondering if that's something that you still see to some extent in the States. And I suppose, to follow up on that, what are the big differences between American corporate culture and over here in the UK?
Yeah, it's a great question. Fascinating sort of dynamic, and seeing the differences on both sides of the pond. I'd say clearly America has had that sort of perception that I think has been justified, that there's a bit of greed, associated with its energy and activities. And Gordon Gekko is the poster child, for that kind of activity. And I'd say that was true. I'd say early in my career, unfortunately, I think you ran into some folks who had the wrong intentions and the wrong focus. I'd say that sort of energy is definitely not as prominent and prevalent as it once was. And I quite frankly, at my organization, Research Affiliates, and the organizations that I've most recently been at, don't see that to be the case. I think, I think again, as I mentioned previously, I think there's much more interest from a corporate culture in America. It seems like, from my perspective, versus the corporations in the UK, where companies here are speaking out about social issues, or even more prominently about financial issues and regulation than they maybe did in the past. I think there's a recognition that technology, and particularly social media, is having an influence that needs to be considered and addressed in how we transact in the financial markets, and how we sort of just conduct and interact with each other. And so I think there's a good recognition here in the U.S., and I don't know if you feel the same way in the UK, but I do think that energy is changing the way that we do business, and is changing the way that we govern, and is changing the way that we interact. And I think that's a healthy sort of outcome.
Yeah, well, it was Margaret Thatcher who famously said, "Greed is good," and I think that was the rallying cry for deregulation over here. But that definitely is a waning kind of consciousness, if you like, amongst the people that work in our industry, and I think ultimately that is a good thing. Yeah, the kind of similarities and differences, I think there's always going to be something that differs between here and the States, and probably a lot of that just comes from our different backgrounds and history and the development of those markets. So yeah, in terms of the differing frameworks for governance and compliance, they're going to inform any differences that do exist between the two regions. Do you think that regulation is at an optimal level these days, or have we kind of had a pendulum swing so far one way to over-regulation, so it starts to suffocate business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in some instances there's over-regulation. I think there's other instances where I think we still could do better. I think you see the phenomenon of Robinhood here in the U.S. and as a sort of app-based sort of solution, and it's been an amazing sort of tool, but it's not without its pitfalls. I think it hasn't done a good job of disclosing the risks to its customers, the costs to its customers, the limitations with its executions abilities, as an example. And so that's where I think there is an opportunity for regulation. I think you saw the family office here in the UK who was able to get these massive positions in Viacom through total return swaps, and basically impact Credit Suisse and some other global financial banks. And I do think there should be some more disclosure for family offices or for high net worth individuals that are accumulating massive positions. I do think that's helpful information for the markets. But I also think, I think there is a lot of sort of poor regulation, where I think there's reporting and people are complying with things that on both sides of the pond that are not really sensible. And I think the regulator's not really gaining much from that set of information or data that's being provided. And I think that's where there's still opportunities to do better. But I think what I do see is on the regulators on both sides of the pond is much more conversation with the industry that they're regulating. So having much more conversations with the principals, the executives, the compliance professionals at the wealth management firms, at the asset management firms, to help develop regulation that's much more effective than they have in the past.
Yeah. So these regulations, they do play a part in the trends that we've looked at, one of which is the consolidation of the industry, particularly for investment management firms like ourselves. And for Henderson Rowe, we're one of the remaining smaller investment houses. And I'm interested to know what role you think we play in that environment, and what value that brings to the industry on a wider level.
Yeah, it's the consolidation's happening across the globe. I think there's clearly it's sort of this like race to zero, where reduce costs for the end client, which again is to the benefit of the end client. And I think us who are all managing assets or serving a role in that framework support that direction. But I also I think and so we've seen consolidation, we've seen other asset managers link up, but we still think that there's opportunities for boutique shops. So Henderson Row, I think, is a great example of that. I think there's a value proposition that Henderson Row offers to the marketplace, and I think and that competitive advantage just needs to continue to be communicated. And I think there's still that opportunity, even as the consolidation. And I think it's clear this is when there's consolidation, as we all know, clients tend to get lost sometimes in the shuffle. There's a lot of delays in process integrations, things like that. And I think Henderson Row has the ability to show the ability to provide continuity, and white glove service, and really provide high touch to its clients. So I think that's what I would continue to focus in on as the marketplace continues to consolidate, and Henderson Row tries to continue to demonstrate how it could add value to its clients.
Certainly, from a personal perspective, the most impressive shift has been the shift in our corporate culture, which itself has got its genesis in research affiliates. We believe that we're a force for good in the industry. So I'd be interested to hear what you feel are the key benchmarks by which that can be judged, and what, if anything, we can continue to learn from, research affiliates, from Asher himself. How can we keep improving?
Yeah, well, I think the focus on corporate control culture is really important, and I think that's an influence from Ralliant. I think that was a need for Henderson Row, and I think that should continue for Henderson Row. And I think that's where there's an opportunity for me as a board member and just as a fan of Henderson Row to continue to help and to continue to add value and to share the experiences of what we do at Research Affiliates. And again, having a value-based sort of culture, I think, is really important. And I think the influence and really the success of the partnership with Ralliant is really just, I think, measured with the health of the organization at Henderson Row. Yes, you want to measure in assets and revenues and clients over a period of time, and those things I think will continue to grow with the partnership with Ralliant. As the Henderson Row continues to execute on its plan. But I also think it's also just getting better processes internally, improving the institutional knowledge, gaining greater capabilities, and expanding the product suite for clients, which clearly has already happened. So I think those are win-wins, and I think those will continue to happen. And I think just the fact that the organization continues to grow, improve its governance and its dialogue and dynamic with Ralliant is what I think is really the benefit of the partnership over time.
Well, it's interesting, that idea of make the corporation happy, and then the results will come.
Yes.
Which in some ways leads me on to the final section of the interview. And as you know, Asher, I'm someone who spent many years, maybe not as many as you, running around athletics tracks, and was really impressed to hear of your exploits in this area. Do remind me, what was your time around the 400? And I've got to ask, was that wind assisted, and was it on an IAAF accredited track?
Fair question. And it's interesting, John. So my kids, I have 3 children. My 2 older children know that I ran track in college and at university, and they were asking for my times and were quite interested over the past week as well. Yeah. But they didn't know to ask if it was wind aided or not. So
there you go.
But I only ran for a year in college, but in an actual individual race, timed, I ran 48.10, not wind assisted. Right. And an actual relay sprint split was 47.7. Wow. Not wind assisted, but nonetheless, unfortunately, I got hurt and developed chronic patellar tendonitis, and that impacted my ability to continue in athletics. But it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed it.
Amazing. So as someone who's done their sports and athletics over here, you go through university or even, high school level, and you watch the films of the States where you've got thousands of people supporting you. And then, for us, we go and turn up on a rugby pitch on a Wednesday afternoon, and there might be 20 people if we're lucky, and there's no stands or anything. So I think being a sportsman over here, you're always very, very envious of what happens in the States. It's just amazing to see the stadiums. But hey, look, I mean, I know to achieve, the kind of times that you've done there, the amount of discipline and like application that goes into the training ahead of, the starting gun firing is huge. And really interested to know what you brought from that area of your life into your business career. And then also, are there any characteristics which you do develop as a successful athlete, which, actually they're best left suppressed to help you achieve well in business?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think, what can be a double-edged sword is, your commitment and your intensity and your focus around training and preparation.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful that at a young age, and I really, again, just learned from getting exposure to folks that I was around, including my parents. My parents had to support themselves and had to get a job and to, work very hard. And I just learned that sort of discipline and that work ethic at a young age and carry that forward, and knew that if I was going to succeed on the track, I was going to have to put in the training and to improve my times. And it was great. Once you put in that effort and see that and put in that hard work and see your time start going from 50 to 49.8 and to 49.5, you really see it paying off, and it motivates you to continue. And so I just carry that forward in my business career. And, it was hard. There was a lot of the Wall Street investment banks that at first didn't really know me, didn't know my profile. And it took some networking and some effort to really penetrate that market. But again, with effort and with time and with discipline, I was able to do so and really start to really build a path. I think where it could be a downfall is if you're putting in too much effort, you're putting in too much, I'd say, preparation on the front end that paralyzes you from moving forward and making a decision. In business, it's important to be thorough, to be comprehensive, but also to be, nimble and make decisions. And I think you can't necessarily, I think sometimes I've had to learn that it's important to be prepared, but once you're prepared, you have to trust the training that you've done, and you have to sort of implement it. I think you have to be able to, and that's what the visionaries like Jeff Bezos and others have done. They've been willing to take the risk, to take that next step, and have to be comfortable and take stock in the work and the preparation that they did to move the business and to advance forward.
Yeah, I guess it's the analogy with sports is just know when you're about to overtrain, because once you've done the training, anything extra, it could lead you to not even getting to the starting line.
Exactly.
Which is great. I must ask you, Asher, when you did dip below the 50, which is in a 400 meter runner's kind of mindset is quite a level. Never made it there myself, but when you did dip below 50, did you have a bit of a celebration?
Yeah, I actually I did dip the first time. I did 50.1 in an individual race in my senior year of high school, and then 49.8 in a split in high school.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing feeling. I mean, my coach running over to me with the stopwatch, showing it to me. And
I can imagine.
It was powerful. It just, to feel, again, no matter what the time is or no matter what the milestone is, and that's for all of us, to really, my coach did an amazing job, because he really built me up, and he made me see that how important and significant that milestone was. And it really motivated me to continue. So yes, it was an amazing experience.
That's great. Well, some brilliant lessons. It's taken me back into some memories of, tracks in the days of old. Yeah. So actually, look, I've got to thank you so much for your time today. Personally, I'm going to look forward to seeing you when you're over in the UK, when everything opens up properly. And, do feel free to bring your spikes, and we can go for a lap of the local track if you fancy it when you're over.
I would love that, John. I can't wait to get over soon.
Great stuff. Excellent.
Cheers, John. Thank you so much.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Asher.